Here talking about Landmark East. So welcome. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your night to be here. It's kind of I think a little bit of a blessing in disguise that we're not all getting together, because it's opened up this way of presenting that probably we'll continue with. It's a really great opportunity to welcome people into the space that wouldn't normally get a chance to visit. So thank you for being here. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. So tonight we're going to talk about the school, obviously, quite a bit. And then we'll move into our focus on literacy. The school was originally founded based on literacy support. So it remains a big focus for us, and we'll talk about that quite a bit. We'll talk about a profile of our students and a little bit about the academics here at Landmark East. We'll talk about teaching the whole child and our philosophy behind that and what that means. Then we'll get into the boarding experience and talk about what the dorm life is like. We're going to look at one of our alumni who also happens to be on our board of directors. We'll find out a little bit about him. It's a really good story. And then we'll look at some testimonials from parents and students. We'll walk through the admissions process and talk a little bit about tuition funding and tuition support. We'll share some links with you, and then we'll have a chance to ask questions at the end. Now, I do want to say that if there are questions during, you can certainly type them in the chat, and we'll make sure we get to them at some point through the evening. So Landmark East School, we're located in Caulfield, Nova Scotia. We're the only school like it in Canada. So we're a boarding and day school for students with learning differences. So I'm not totally sure where everyone is joining us from tonight, but we do have students that are from the local area that bus in as far as about 30 minutes away, and students that walk as well. And we have boarding students from around the province, from around the country, and international students that come in to live here on campus and learn here as well. We're about a 5-minute walk from Acadia University, which in sort of more normal times is a really great resource for us to have, because we have a good partnership with them. With some of their facilities we get access to and do work with their students and staff. And we're about an hour drive from Halifax and a little bit over an hour from the Halifax airport. We serve grades 2 to 12, which is students who are between 7 and 19 years old. We have a capacity of 75 students. Right now we're at about 50, or we're at 53, and we usually operate between about 55 and 65 students. We have a 3-to-1 student to teacher ratio. In elementary grades, the class sizes tend to be about 2 to 4 students. In middle school, they're usually 3 to 6 students. And in high school, we have classes that are 4 to 9 students. Our students come and they get individual programming. Every one of them gets that. So in public school, what that sounds like is maybe an IEP or an IPP or adaptations. And for us, it's the norm. So every student, regardless of what grade they're in or what courses they're taking, if they are taking different courses in high school, they do get individual programming based on what their challenges are and what their path to success is. And for our graduates, we have about 85% of our graduates that are accepted to a post-secondary institution. So our campus itself is about 5 acres. There's the main building, which if you're from the local area, that's probably what you're familiar with. It faces right onto the main street of Caulfield. That's the Johnson Academic Center. So that building itself is over 100 years old. It was originally a home, and then it was a hotel. And at one point it was the headquarters for an electric company. So there's a lot of history in the building, which is very evident sort of as you walk through it. It does not look like a typical school, and a lot of times it doesn't feel that way. It very much feels like a home, because that's how it was originally built. Also on campus, there's the girls' dormitory, which has the downstairs has a music room, a art room, and a drama room. And in the boys' dormitory downstairs, there's a weight room and a cardio room and a movement studio. And both dormitories have common spaces for students as well, with pool tables and couches and ping pong tables and televisions and things like that. So that's a little bit about our campus. In the main building as well, connected to that now a little bit newer is biology lab and chemistry lab, which is all sort of part of the academic main building, and it's all connected. We'll link to this at the end, and I should say there is a video tour that you can take. It's on our website, and you'll find a link for that at the end here. So right now I'm going to pass it off to our head of school, Karen Fougere. She'll take a minute to introduce herself and then talk a little bit about our school's focus on literacy.
Okay, thank you, Daniel, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us and learning more about Landmark East School. I have been in education for over 30 years. I'm a very student-centric leader, and I'm passionate about creating opportunities for children to learn and have the experiences of being successful. So I'd say one of my first life-changing moments was when one of my students, when I gave him the opportunity to do his science test orally rather than the traditional pen and paper, he performed 30% better. And so I continued to work with him and let him do his tests through other ways. And we explored on many different ways to see what worked best for him. And at the end of the day, his achievements were so much better when it wasn't pen and paper that I said, this is really incredible, and we have to explore this more. So I then changed my focus in my education and started exploring what were learning differences, what were accommodations that could really help students perform better and become really the citizens they're destined to be. From there, I did start to work more with learning disability students, and really what I see now is all these experiences have led me here to Landmark East School. I have found more purpose and meaning in this school, and I connect with the purpose and meaning of this school. And this particular slide with the focus on literacy, what we see with our students with learning disabilities is often they have hurdles that get in their way, and so they can't quite perhaps learn to read, or maybe they have numerical concerns or issues where the numeracy piece isn't working for them. And the magic of Landmark East means that we can put things in place that allow them to have success in those areas. And in particular with literacy, we know that if you can't read, it's very difficult to navigate the world. And so really this says it's an immeasurable impact. So by giving kids the opportunity to learn how to read, their academic success improves, their employment opportunities improve, and really they become who they're destined to be. Their confidence improves, and we see that every single day in the building. So we also talk about removing the barriers. And again, that's that piece with the learning disabilities and finding accommodations that allow the students to be successful. So I'm going to ask Moira Taylor, our literacy coordinator, if she would please take over and talk to you about our literacy programs.
Okay, hi there. What I find especially great about what Landmark offers for literacy is students remain in the Nova Scotia curriculum classroom. So they are still taking an ELA class every single day. And like Daniel was mentioning, it is already making those accommodations. That norm is already happening inside the classroom. But what we also offer is an intensive support if you are elementary or middle school, or a learning strategies class at a much smaller group. And this is where, if your child is in need of intensive literacy support, this is where our staff who are trained in several different programs. We're focusing on the Orton-Gillingham approach, which I'll talk about here in a minute, but our staff have a toolbox of different programs to use for each child that comes into our school. So it's not a one size fits all. It's not, we teach dyslexic students all the same. We teach all ADHD students all the same. It really depends on getting to know them, looking at where their strengths and weaknesses were in their current school situation. And as we get to know them better, we can really apply different programs and different strategies to each individual student. So we have teachers who are trained in Barton, teachers who are trained in LIPS, which is much more of a how sounds feel when they're leaving your mouth and how sounds look when you're leaving their mouth, because for some students, they might be able to read the word, but it's more of a pronunciation thing, or some students really are going to be struggling with some vowel sounds. So the programs break down reading, speaking, they break everything down only to then immediately build everything back up. So over the past couple of years, we've really focused training our staff in Orton Gillingham, which is an approach to literacy that is multisensory. It is extremely structured. It is extremely structured, and it is extremely sequential. So wherever your child is when they come in, we are able to meet them there. We actually often go maybe one step backwards, back from that, to give them the opportunity to become used to the programming, become more comfortable as they are confidently working through things, so that when they do come to their challenges, they are used to the routine. So the multisensory approach shows, there's research that shows that a student is going to learn how to read, they're going to learn letter sounds, they're going to learn, they're going to improve their vocabulary if they have both or all three of visual, auditory, and a kinesthetic and tactile approach. So what you see here in this photo, on the left is a student's desk, and they have a board that's a little bit, it's called a bumpy board, and it makes it so when they're tracing letters, when they're tracing words, they're saying it out loud, they're hearing it from me, they're repeating it themselves, and they're also tracing with their fingers on something that's going to be sending a signal to their brain, and it's just reinforcing all of the things we learn. So Orton Gillingham is great for that. It's also very structured. So in the beginning, we always see about a week or two of, oh, like this is, you know, it's new to them. It might seem a little bit overwhelming, but as you see in the picture on the right, some of our classes are one-on-one, some of our classes are 2, 3-on-1. So we really have the chance to work together with the students to ensure that they are feeling comfortable with the new routine. And the routine actually builds confidence. As soon as a student is able to predict what is coming next in a program, they lose that anxiety of not really being in control of their learning, and they start to take more of that independence. They feel more comfortable with what they're doing, and that's when the real learning can start. The program also offers a lot of immediate feedback and scaffolding their independence. So when we do the program, we can see instantly their areas of struggle, and then we can then build the following lesson based on that. So there's a lot of flexibility in the program for our trained staff. 5 of our staff are currently taking part in a higher level of Orton Gillingham, and I think there are 9 of us who are trained currently. And then, like I mentioned before, everybody is coming with their own professional development and their own training. And I think the last thing I wanted to mention, and it will relate to when I think it might be Dana who will be speaking about the program of study, but we try our best to match our staff and their training with the students' needs coming in. So if your child is, their only barrier is literacy, we're going to try our best to match your child with the teacher who has the biggest toolkit, the most that they can offer. And on the flip side, if their struggle is numeracy, we also have staff whose focus is more in numeracy as well.
Thank you, Moira. Am I off mute? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Moira. Right now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the profile of our students. I hesitate to use the term typical students because I think everyone in the building would probably say that none of our students are what you would call typical, but certainly they share, or a lot of them share, common experiences or common stories before they come to Landmark East, which is one of just kind of not being in the right place for them, and not having the right fit, and having some, like Moira mentioned, some barriers to success. And that's often the commonality with the students that we have come here. But what those experiences may be, or where they're coming from, can be very different. But this is going to be sort of a general profile of some of our students. So our students, like we mentioned before, have learning differences, and there's a wide range of learning differences that we see here and that we work with. So most commonly is probably dyslexia, ADHD, ASD, but we do see a lot of numeracy learning differences, dysgraphia and dyscalculia. And so what we look at when we look at a student's challenges through their learning differences is, are they the right fit for the school, and do we think that they can find success here? So like I mentioned, a lot of our students, it's not necessarily a matter of not being able to do the work. It's just that there's barriers for them, whether it be through literacy or some other challenge that they're facing through their learning difference, that they're just not thriving in a traditional school setting, and a non-traditional school setting like ours might be a better place for them. And another thing that we really find is important and valuable for students coming in is that they're motivated to learn. It doesn't necessarily mean that they love school, because a lot of them come, like I mentioned, having had maybe negative school experiences for one reason or another. But many of our students do have a recognition that there's something better for them, or that there's an opportunity for them somewhere to learn and grow. So now I'm going to pass it off to Dana Caulfield, who's our elementary and middle school coordinator, and she's going to talk a little bit about our academics here and the philosophy behind teaching the whole child.
Thank you, Daniel. Good evening, everyone. So as Moira Taylor mentioned earlier, at Landmark East, we are following the Nova Scotia Department of Ed provincial guidelines. So when students are sitting in my grade 10 math class, for example, they're learning the same material as everybody else in the province who is taking that class. And the student who's sitting in a grade 8 English class is doing the same material as every other grade 8 in the province as well for their English class. The difference is that in our classes, we have students, their class sizes with maybe 5 students or 3 students or 6 students. And so we can get to know the students so much better. We can build relationships with them, and we can tailor the way we teach, the approaches that we use to work best for them. If a student has a particular interest in a subject, then even as a math teacher, I can find a way to help motivate them and draw them into the class by drawing on their interests, because there's only 5 students in the class, and so it is easy to pick and choose the things that we talk about within the curriculum, of course, but in a way that is going to, grab their attention and engage them, because that's what they're interested in. And so we have a lot of flexibility with what we do, as long as we're meeting the curriculum guidelines. Not only can we tailor what we do to be motivating because of the students' interests, but we also can individualize our approach because we know the students so well. And so when we have a student coming in, amongst the 5 students, although we may all be doing the same novel study, or we may all be doing the same unit in math, every teacher in the school is very capable of getting to know those students very early on and identifying what their strengths are, what their needs are, and then, as again Moira Taylor was talking about, scaffold what we do so that we're starting in a place where the students are comfortable and building up from there, as opposed to, say, throwing them into a class and trying to teach them grade 9 curriculum when maybe there were gaps along the way. So we can identify those gaps, individualize what we're doing, so that those students, a grade 9 student, could still meet the grade 9 curriculum outcomes, but we fill in all those gaps that maybe occurred when they were in grade 4 or grade 6 or whenever it was. And so we can build them up from what they do know to a place where they can meet the outcomes at the level where they should be. Every class also has the opportunity of really focusing on all of the needs of the student. So sitting in a math class, there may be a time when we're spending our day focusing on vocabulary building. And so there is, a focus on literacy even in our math class or in our science class or in our social studies classes, because again, very easy with our small classes to do cross-curricular work that allows us to build the students' skills, not just for the class that we're intended to be teaching them, but across the board in all academic areas. This, of course, leads us to things that aren't necessarily academic in terms of teaching the whole child. When you get to know your students, you start to learn a lot more about them in terms of their emotional needs. Dan talked earlier about how many of the students had come from a place where maybe they didn't feel very good about themselves academically, or they weren't really sure where they fit in because, they struggled with some aspects of school. But at Landmark East, because we build such strong relationships with our students, in a math class, we are also able to support them when we recognize that something's going on in their life. We can build their confidence. We can break down many of those barriers that Karen Fougere mentioned that are obstacles that maybe got in their way of them being successful. They really sometimes don't have anything to do with their academic abilities, but just because of all those struggles that they had earlier in their academic life. And so there is a strong focus in all of our classes to build up the students, identify what their needs are, and work on those things. Moira Taylor mentioned the programs of study. Some of our students will, the students and their families will make a decision to have a one-on-one, which would mean that you would have one class every day, which is just one teacher with one student, or two-on-one, two students with a teacher. I know that it was mentioned earlier, our average class sizes. So maybe your English and math and social studies and science classes might have 4 students in it, but to have one 45-minute block a day where it's just one student with the teacher, it's incredible how much you can get done in that class because you've got such focused, intense opportunity to really drill down into what it is that the student is working on. And so this is intensive support for our elementary students and middle school students, learning strategies for our high school students. And in those classes, we can really focus on literacy, numeracy, organizational skills, executive functioning skills, any sort of social issues that the student might be struggling with, because every teenager and pre-teenager has all sorts of things going through their heads every day. And it's just so nice for them to have that added support, because sometimes navigating those social interactions doesn't come naturally to our kids. At the end of the day, everyone participates in study hall. This is one thing that parents really love, because a lot of parents struggle with supporting their kids with their homework every day if they're up very late at night helping with the math homework or their English homework. But instead at Landmark East, we do that hard work for you. The students stick around after school and they do study hall, where we have teachers available to help them with their homework, so that when they then go home to their parents, they're done. They're done with their schoolwork for the day, and you can rest assured knowing that they finished their homework and they got the support that they needed, and then you as a family can just enjoy the company of one another and do whatever it is that the family likes to do. We have also started a program, and we've been having a program going on for a number of years now called Successful Me, which is where our students meet with an advisor every day for 15 minutes and once a week for an hour, where they do a variety of activities focused on setting students up for success. We know that as much as our students might be able to do very well in their math class or their English class or their science classes, whatever they're interested in, there's still some other things in life that are really, really important for success, like perseverance and proactivity and goal setting, knowing who your support systems are, and emotional regulation. And it's a really important thing at Landmark East that we support the students with that, because sometimes students don't know how to do these things on their own. And so we have explicit lessons where we teach these things to the students, where we spend time building those skills and also, talking to the students about how their success is going. And then, of course, those things are applied outside of their Successful Me class as well, because when they go off to their English class, their English teacher knows that these are things that they're working on in advisory and Successful Me, so it can be reinforced. In addition to our advisors and our Successful Me classes, we also have 3 success facilitators who are, there's always one available throughout the day. So if something's going on in somebody's life, then there is a success facilitator who's there to talk to them. Or quite often, our success facilitators are doing proactive things with the students, where they know that a student is working on certain skills, and so they'll check in with the students on a regular basis to connect with them and see how they're going with that skill building, so that we're better setting them up for ongoing success.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you very much. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about boarding, which I know for some folks here, if you're local, it may not necessarily apply. But we'll talk about this, and then we'll talk a little bit about what the dorms are like, and then the boarding experience itself. So as far as the dorms, they're very structured and safe and supervised at all times of day. The meals are all provided, and I can say from my own experience that they're quite delicious. Each student has a very nice room. There's a heat pump in the rooms. They have their own bathrooms in the rooms. They do come furnished, although students are required to bring their own bedding. But other than that, for the most part, they have everything they need, and then they can sort of bring what they want. There's also common areas in the dormitories as well. The boarding experience itself is very much a continuation of what Dana was talking about in terms of teaching the whole child. So the learning, it really doesn't stop for them. They have a very structured day. They wake up at the same time every day. They are required to do cleaning, and they have times for laundry every night, which laundry is also a gradual release of responsibility for many students. But they really are supported. And it's something I joke about with parents a lot, but they really are supported up until the point where they don't need to be. So for students coming in, a lot of them maybe have never done their own laundry or done any deep cleaning in a bathroom before. And then within a few weeks, they're into the routine, and they have that life skill moving forward. And that's very much true for a lot of the boarding experience. So they gain skills that that they just wouldn't necessarily get in other places. So independence, self-advocacy, a sense of resilience for a lot of the students. And then there's a lot of fun things that they just kind of do in general. They're always doing activities every afternoon before their study hall, and weekend activities are planned by the student life team as well. The student life team really does an amazing job keeping them active and planning fun things for them to do. But the other thing that they really do a great job at is building up the community and helping make those meaningful lifelong connections between students. It's really a special community that I know the boarding students that they have. So now I'm going to highlight one of our alumni. This is Tom Paul, great fellow. He actually serves on our board of directors as well now. So he's still very much involved with the school and involved. He's often involved with the walkathons and other fundraisers every year. But Tom's story is, again, very similar to many of our students before they come to Landmark East. He was getting tutored. He was being taken out of class for extra help, and up until grade 5, it just sort of, with all the supports that were being given to him, it just wasn't working and wasn't really kicking in. So Tom came to Landmark East in grade 5 and stayed through to his graduation, and credits the school with learning to learn. So he did his academic courses the same way that he would have in any other school, but what he really says he gained here was the ability to sort of grow and be a learner. So Tom went on to be very successful after his time here, and was a flight instructor in New Brunswick, and has flown for a couple of different companies here in Canada, and now flies for WestJet. So Tom is very much a superstar. He's a great guy, and has been very successful. But I think what stands out to me, and what stands out for a lot of our alumni, is that without Landmark East, it's not necessarily that there would have been no opportunities. It's just that there wouldn't have been as many, or not necessarily the opportunities that they would have wanted. So for a lot of our students, it really does open doors and opens up chances to do things that, quite frankly, they were off the radar before coming to Landmark East. Right now, I'm just going to put these up rather than reading through all of them. I'll just put them up for a couple minutes, and I think these are important to highlight because we can sort of sit here and talk about the school a lot, and we all have great things to say, but it means something different when it comes from a parent or a student, for sure. So these are just some of our testimonials from students and parents. One of the things that I think is pretty clear, or a common theme in all of them, is the sense of self-doubt that existed before coming here, and the resilience and the self-confidence that were built up. A lot of them, don't necessarily say I came to Landmark East and the one thing that I remember was my science class. It may be for some of our students, but a lot of them, what the takeaway is, just like Tom said, learning to learn, and building that foundation of being a lifelong learner, and creating opportunities. There's a few more. And again, if you are looking for a parent to contact, or someone to talk to, maybe someone who's in your local area, by all means, let me know, and we can put you in contact with someone for sure. Okay. So now we'll get into the admissions process. It's relatively straightforward as far as admissions processes go. You spend a lot of time talking to me. For some, that's, well, I don't know, I'll reserve judgment on that. But essentially what happens is we have an initial call and we talk about the school and maybe talk a little bit about background and get an initial sense of whether or not the student that you're calling about might be a good fit at the school. I'll usually encourage people after that initial conversation to submit an application if we do feel like it could be a good fit. The application form, it is a pretty straightforward form with some information on it about the student and parents. Then there's some other documents that need to come in. So things like a psych ed assessment or medical documents that might be pertinent for us. A reference from the student's most recent school, along with things like report cards, transcripts, a letter from parents and students, and a letter from the former school, all of which we have a form and some questions that can kind of lead those, guide those letters. And if available, some work samples. And that all comes in, and we sort of use that to start building the learner profile, which is continued once the student gets here. We build that learner profile to, like Dana said, it's not about ignoring the challenges or forgetting about the learning differences. It's about learning how to work within them and removing the barriers so that students can start to focus on strengths. And that's a big part of that learner profile that's built. So after the documentation comes in, we do an interview with certainly the student and anyone else in the family who would like to be there. And if it's a student that can get here, and obviously that is changing every day now at this point, but if it's a student that can get here, we'll do a few days for a test run. If it's a boarding student, we usually look to have them here for about a week, so that we can get a sense of whether or not they'd be a good fit, and just as important, if for them to get a sense of whether or not they feel like they would be a good fit here as well. So this bit will be specific to students in Nova Scotia, but there is possibilities for tuition support even if you are a student out of province or out of country. There's some specific funding that is available for Nova Scotia students, but certainly I have conversations with parents who are not within the province about this as well. But we'll talk a little bit about it within Nova Scotia. So Nova Scotia government has something called the Tuition Support Program, which we are lucky enough to be a school that qualifies for. So if you're a student who has a need for individual programming, has studied in Canada for at least a year, is a resident of Nova Scotia, and has a diagnosed learning difference, you immediately qualify for a grant from the Nova Scotia government to get some tuition support. On top of that, there's a possibility for a tuition bursary from the Nova Scotia government as well. And so both of those are $9,100 and up to $9,100. So from the Nova Scotia government, you can potentially get $18,200, which is a really nice support for students that are coming here. In addition to that, there's a Landmark East Bursary Foundation, which is a charity set up specifically to assist Landmark East students. So it's not, it's obviously very much connected to the school, but it's not the school itself. It's a foundation that raises money specifically to support students coming here. So that's within Nova Scotia, and certainly if you give me a call or want to email me, we can get pretty deep into that conversation and into the supports that are in place. But there is quite a bit of funding sources that families have gotten in the past. So there's students here that are supported through local clubs and organizations, whether that be legions, Rotary clubs, or similar types of community groups. A lot of times families will ask for help from organizations just that they're involved with, or groups that they're involved with. There's support for military families. There's support for First Nations students in Nova Scotia through Jordan's principal. Local businesses often will support, and sometimes it's a matter of just asking around, because there are places that certainly support students going to post-secondary with bursaries or grants, and sometimes it's a matter of just asking the question that they haven't been asked before to get some support for maybe coming to middle school or high school or elementary school. So these are some helpful links that I can share, and they'll be posted with the this recording when we're done. So there are lots of links on our website if you are looking for more information. Please feel free to contact one of us if you are, but there's links about boarding experience, student life, academics, admissions. We do have a media page with quite a few videos with testimonials, and like I mentioned, a tour of the school. And then you can find us on social media as well, basically, well, almost anywhere that you can be on social media, anywhere that we can operate. And that's it from us. So thank you so much for coming.